All right, stand by. 10 seconds to go.
Ready, camera.
And cue talent.
1.
Roll to record.
Are you missing Mitt? I'm John Phillips, and Republican remorse is at the top of today's rundown. Mitt Romney, quoted in a Washington Post retrospective on the campaign for president so far, said the following in late December, quote, "Look, I had one person who was running for president, and I won't give you the name, called me and said, 'I hope you don't close the door. We may need you.' That's a person running for president, a candidate, a Republican. I'm not giving it a second thought," end quote. Romney goes on to say that he thought carefully about running again, but Jeb Bush's operatives quickly scuttled talk of his return with a tide of negativity. He went on to say, quote, "I like Jeb a lot. I think he'd be a great president, but felt he was unfairly but severely burdened by the W years. A Bush versus Clinton head-to-head would be too easy for the Democrats," end quote. Which is a very nice way of saying Jeb is an awful candidate, would lose. So who's the candidate dreaming of Mitt Romney in 2016? Does the GOP establishment have buyer's remorse over backing Jeb yet? And where can they turn to stop Trump? Joining me to talk about all the controversy is author and political satirist Scott Ott in his home studio in Dallas, Texas, and here in Southern California, stand-up comic and PJTV contributor Stephen Cruiser. Let's start with the mystery of which candidate called Mitt Romney and said, "We may need you to come back." Who do you think it was?
Lindsey Graham. The most establishment-y guy not in there anymore. It was Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham, well, you know, he just can't imagine a world in which one of the old guard Republicans isn't ascending to the presidency next. So, yeah, it was Lindsey Graham.
I think you're right. Scott, what do you say?
You know, far be it from me to second guess either you or Stephen Cruiser on a matter such as this, but I think that the way the quote was stated opens up two possibilities. Number one, they weren't necessarily saying he should come in and run for president, but he should be in it, so maybe he would be a vice presidential pick. And number two, he was saying that to say how firmly he is opposed to the idea of running for president. So that was the whole purpose of him bringing up the story. He said, look, a guy who's in the race right now asked me to, you know, sort of not close off the options, and I said no to him.
What's with the animosity between Romney and the Bushes? Because we've seen this bubble up before. And if you read between the lines with what he said here, he clearly has absolutely no confidence in Jeb as a candidate. Didn't have confidence in Jeb as a candidate going back long ago. What's with that rift?
Well, I think what it was coming into this is when Trump wasn't on the horizon or anything else, all of Jeb's problems, when Jeb was just presumed to be able to be the heir apparent, like, you know, and he thought the Republican Party was going to do what it always was and be hierarchical and get the next guy in there. Their biggest fear was Romney deciding he wanted to run again. I think that's what was bugging them. That was what was nagging at them the whole time. And that's probably what they spent the most time gaming against, you know, in case that happened. So I think that's probably where all of that animosity built up, because they really didn't see anybody else from the establishment or from outside. You know, they obviously didn't foresee Trump, but they didn't see anybody else who was a legit threat to Jeb other than Mitt Romney.
You know, it's funny, Scott, how this works in the political game. The people that hate each other the most and attack each other the most are the people that are most similar to one another. They're working the same corner. You're looking at the ads right now in New Hampshire, and you've got John Kasich attacking Chris Christie. Or you look at the ads in Iowa, and you have Mike Huckabee attacking Ted Cruz because they're going after the same voters. Is that what just played out here?
Yeah, I think so. And I've often said that when I was running for office, I served on as executive director of a county Republican committee. I served on the Republican State Committee in Pennsylvania, and I served as a county commissioner. And when all that was going on, I had more trouble and more vitriol thrown at me from people in my own party than ever any Democrat did. And frankly, the Democrats were no problem whatsoever for me. It was Republicans. And I think principally, you're basically competing for the same shelf space in the supermarket. You know,
no
so
question.
The Doritos guy is not upset at the Pop-Tarts people because that's different. It's a different aisle. We don't really care.
All right, we're not that far from Vegas. Give me a number.
So you've seen John's pantry. Doritos and Pop-Tarts. You pretty much that's the entire Phillips pantry
People,
right there.
I've never touched
that's
a
the
drug
food
in my
pyramid
life.
right there, brother.
Never touched a drug in my life. People walk into my kitchen and say, "A pothead lives here." Swear to God, not true. All right, we're not that far from Las Vegas. Give me a percent. Give me a percentage chance that Mitt Romney is going to jump back in this race from 0 to 100. 0 meaning nothing, 100 meaning he's definitely in.
0. It's not going to happen. I think he wanted it to happen more than he was saying. I mean, you know, everybody says Mitt's a nice guy and everything, but he could have just emphatically denied wanting to run again without telling that little story. You know what I mean? That little story really doesn't do anybody a service there. That doesn't help anything. Even the candidates now want me back, but no, I'm not coming back. You all really think I'm pretty, don't you? No, so I don't think he's going to come back, though. I think it's way too late. The Republican Party is not in the disarray that the press would like to have you believe. We're going to get a nominee. He's going to be a nominee from someone who's running. It's going to be a nominee from someone who's running right now.
All right.
It's going to be fine.
So you go with 0. What's your number, Scott?
Can I pick a negative number? You know, I think I'm with 0. I'm with 0 there. However, I disagree with Stephen on this. I think that that Mitt Romney tells that little story for the same reason that beautiful girl in high school wanted me to call her and ask her to the dance, because she wanted to be able to say no. If I hadn't called her, she would have been disappointed. Of course, she said no. She felt good about herself because she was wanted. And I think Mitt Romney wants to be wanted, like most of us do. And so if he wasn't throwing out those little things, who would have him on TV? The guy who's not going to tell a witty anecdote or an interesting behind-the-scenes story and is not running for president. Who cares?
All right, let me give you a scenario here. Right now, Donald Trump is leading in New Hampshire and Ted Cruz is leading in Iowa. The question is, and if the elections were held today, I think we all agree that that's who would end up winning each of those states, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so right now the debate is who comes in second and third in Iowa, who comes in second and third in New Hampshire. The conventional wisdom among establishment Republicans is that Marco Rubio is going to finish in the money in both of those states. If that doesn't happen, let's say it's some sort of permutation of Trump, Cruz, and Ben Carson, or Huckabee, or one of the others.
Christie making the move in New Hampshire.
Okay. Who does the establishment get behind? Do they put all of their chips on Rubio and hope for a Rubio resurgence in Nevada and South Carolina? Or do they look from outside the field and say, all right, maybe we should rethink Mitt Romney, and maybe the party elders go to Romney and beg him to come back in, especially right before Nevada, right before Michigan, 2 states that he won in the primaries before?
Your presumption that the RNC and the GOP hierarchy can be that nimble is sweet, John. It's just adorable. You think that they can shift on the fly like that? I mean, the only institution I know that moves slower than the GOP is the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, and we just forgave Galileo 10 years ago. Okay, so I think they will reflexively get behind Rubio. I think that's all they know how to do.
But what if Rubio doesn't show viability?
If he doesn't show viability, I think that they will. Here's what I'm not making this up. I'm not being flippant here. I think that they will then go into an emergency plan to try to prop him up going into the Super Tuesday, the March 1st ones. I think that's what they'll do reflexively. I don't think until after March 1st they're going to start going, oh, God, we got to get behind one of these other 2 guys, meaning Trump or Cruz. I don't see them being that nimble, and that they're just so hard to shake from their old ways.
All right, Scott, I'm going to give you the same question. Just take out Republican establishment and replace it with Chamber of Commerce. What do they do if Rubio doesn't show viability and it's 3 guys they don't like at the top?
And who are those 3 guys again that you were telling me?
Trump, Ben Carson, and Cruz.
I think they go with Cruz. I mean, what else are you going to do? I don't think that Carson has enamored himself with the Chamber of Commerce. And frankly, I don't think that these old line institutions like the RNC or the Chamber of Commerce have the kind of power that they used to have. I mean, in essence, I think Trump's going to finish well in the first couple of primaries because he's got this massive air superiority campaign. Cruz is going to do very well in the first couple of primaries because he's got the boots on the ground organization. But after that, even guys like Rubio, who would look like a viable candidate just in, his appearance and his policy chops and all that kind of stuff, do not have the ground game, and they do not have the air superiority. And the Republican National Committee and the Chamber of Commerce no longer have the willingness to knock on doors to build a groundswell like that. They just don't have the capability to do it.
Here's my prediction. I think you're both right. Romney does not get back in. But if Rubio doesn't show viability in the first 2 primaries, is what they do is they strong-arm Jeb, they strong-arm Christie, they strong-arm Kasich, and they say, you need to get out of the race. All of your resources need to go to Marco Rubio, and we need to put all the chips right there.
That's somewhat plausible. I can believe that. I don't see a lot of scenarios where they get behind Cruz unless Cruz wins both Iowa and New Hampshire right away. And then because Cruz is really well positioned for the Super Tuesday stuff, the SEC primaries, that's been his game all along. He wasn't even Iowa is bonus for him. He wasn't planning on winning Iowa at first. He wasn't even trying at first. So if he wins that, and then I can see them getting behind him. But your scenario is very plausible. But I think they're reflexively going to have to get behind Rubio.
Okay, last question before we end the show. Who does the Republican establishment hate more, Ted Cruz or Donald Trump?
Ted Cruz. I said that before. I'll say it. I stick with that. Ted
Scott?
Cruz.
And my answer is still yes.
The answer is Ted Cruz. You're exactly right, because if Ted Cruz comes in, he's got a bunch of judges, he's got a bunch of appointees, he's got a direction that he wants to push the party in that wouldn't necessarily be there with Trump. Trump doesn't have that kind of infrastructure in his campaign, so I think he would play ball more with the guys in D.C. than people think that he would. I think Ted Cruz would come in with his own agenda.
Scorched earth. As my friend and colleague Scott Ott once said recently, Ted Cruz wants to remake the Republican Party.
Yes.
That's not on Trump's agenda at all. Trump wants to win this election. That's fine. That's perfectly valid for a candidate to want to do. But Cruz wants to remake the entire GOP. So that's, yes, they don't like him.
All right. You get the last word. So what do you think? Are you missing mittens? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.